Ladies and gentlemen, this is huge. Hit subscribe to this channel right now. Go to H.A. Goodman's other channel right after this. To my super chat. I can't do this without you. Thank you. All of the emails, all of the released documents point to the usual suspects. Those going after President Trump. Those who got 20 grand, 50 grand, 80, $139,000 from, we'll just call him Jeffrey Epp. Okay, just for the algorithm right now, since we're just gonna go and $20,000. This is ABC News. It's $20,000 Hillary Clinton received from Jeffrey Epp. Okay, $20,000. Then you have John Kerry received money. Then you had Bill Clinton, of course, but you also had Chuck Schumer receiving $22,000. Okay. Then you had Bill Richardson receiving $50,000. Stacey Plaskett, who was just accused of literally texting him in 2019, receiving $8,100. You can't even make this up. She's literally accused of texting him during congressional testimony. Okay? So how do you explain that if you're Democrats saying, what does Trump have to hide? Trump did not get money from Jeffrey Epp. Okay, it was Democrats, $50,000 to Bill Richardson. Then you have one Democrat literally texting him in 2019. Then you have the DNC who took money to the tune of $32,000 in the 90s. Okay, and then in 2019 or 2018, they were still taking money. The DCCC received $10,000 from Jeffrey Epp. Okay. Then you have, and we'll get to President Trump releasing all of it today, $139,000 to Democrats from 89 to 2003. $77,000 to John Kerry, Richard Gephardt, Chris Dodd. This is all money that they received. Then you have Michael Wolff, and you've heard a lot of nonsense and misinformation about this exchange. Wolff literally, when they say, well, what did Trump know? Epp in the own email said, of course he knew. He asked Ghislaine to stop. He kicked Epp out of Mar-a-Lago and asked Ghislaine Maxwell to stop. Literally, that's admitted by Jeffrey Epp in the email to Michael Wolff, yet again exonerating Trump. He literally told the monster to stop committing evil criminal acts while one Democrat was texting him up until 2019. So years before, when Trump found out that he was possibly committing criminal acts, Trump kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago, wanted nothing to do with him, and Michael Wolff even confirmed that within the email. Because Epp wrote, oh yeah, he knew because he told Ghislaine to stop, and then he was kicked out of Mar-a-Lago. That literally exonerates Trump. When Democrats knew, and yet they still, according to Vox and CNN and others, not only covered for Jeffrey Epp, but were texting him. So the question is, what do Democrats have to hide when they accepted all that money? What did they give in return? If you accept money and you're a politician, what do you give in return? That's the question. Not Trump not releasing them because of possible lawsuits from victims, from innocent celebrities or billionaires that happen to know Jeffrey Epp, like everyone in New York happened to know him. So President Trump, his administration mishandled, because when they came into power, they said, okay, wow, all of these emails, all of this information has people, whether it's victims or people who are innocent, within those documents, within those emails that could then lead to endless lawsuits, in addition to potentially the files being corrupted. Anyway, hit subscribe to this channel right now. Let's get to it.
President Trump, after going on offense over the weekend, now switching Of course, doing a 180, now calling on House Republicans to vote for the release of the Epstein files. More on that in a moment, but first, David Spunt with the latest on the new details in the investigation. David, hello and good morning.
Hi, Bill. Good morning to you. There is an active probe taking place out of the U.S. Attorney's Office in Manhattan, where federal prosecutors there are looking at the Epstein files and ties, but not to President Trump, instead to former President Bill Clinton, former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, and others. Now, the Justice Department, under Attorney General Pam Bondi, is now back in the business of looking into the Epstein file story. I say back in the business because just in July, this DOJ couldn't get away from the story fast enough, putting out a memo on July 6th reading, quote, "To that end, while we have labored to provide the public with maximum information regarding Epstein and ensured examination of any evidence in the government's possession, it is the determination of the Justice Department and of the FBI that no further disclosure would be appropriate or warranted." Well, that's until President Trump asked Attorney General Pam Bondi to investigate Summers and Clinton's alleged ties to Epstein. That's when many of the president's supporters, though, back in July, became enraged, fully believing there was more to the story, laying blame directly on FBI Director Patel and Attorney General Bondi. Former President Clinton's deputy chief of staff posting over the weekend, these emails prove Bill Clinton did nothing and knew nothing. The rest is noise meant to distract from election losses, backfiring shutdowns, and who knows what else. Now, critics say the DOJ, the same DOJ that accused the Biden administration of weaponizing, is just as weaponized under President Trump, prosecuting the president's perceived enemies. Former FBI Director James Comey, New York AG Letitia James, and
Okay, the issue was that when it comes to the prosecutions of people who tried to prosecute Trump in the most unethical and almost certain criminal manner in many ways, they created a standard, a legal framework, where if you don't fill out a document, like so Letitia James accused Trump of not filling out specific documents, never gave him a free pass, but then they expect to be given a free pass. And mortgage fraud is very simple to prove. It's not difficult to prove. Trying to accuse a former president and billionaire of inflating a net worth is not only difficult to prove, it was thrown out of court. Every single attempt at going after Trump was either thrown out of court or the Supreme Court backed President Trump over the Colorado State Supreme Court. Okay. We know from Russiagate what they did was in many ways criminal. That's why there are conspiracy statutes that will be leveled against a whole bunch of people this coming year.
Former National Security Advisor John Bolton, to name a few, are facing federal charges. The president has also called for an investigation into California Democratic Senator Adam Schiff. And we reported late last week that the president's housing director, Bill Pulte, referred Democrat Congressman Eric Swalwell to the Justice Department over allegations of potential mortgage fraud.
If Trump was accused of committing mortgage fraud, that would be easy to prove. These people are accused of committing mortgage fraud, perjury. The conspiracy statutes are tougher to prove, but what they did was break the law going after Trump. With Trump, they literally made things up. When Trump goes after them for actually committing crimes, it's a totally different story.
Bill.
Okay, a lot to keep track of, and you will. Thank you, David, for that. David Spunt. Washington, Dana.
And more on this with Fox News contributor Hugh Hewitt. Let me just read to you from Trump's Truth Social post on Epstein. House Republicans should vote to release the Epstein files because we have nothing to hide, and it's time to move on from this Democrat hoax perpetrated by radical left lunatics in order to deflect from the great success of the Republican Party. I think this falls into the category of what I used to call you need to be for what's going to happen. This vote was going to happen, and it looked like he was going to lose 40 Republicans, so now he's for it.
It is better, good morning, Dana. It is better to be playing offense than defense. It is better to declare, finally, I don't care, put everything out that you can put out. Now, you can't put out grand jury material. There are reasons for that. But the president is showing he's not afraid of it. And given everything that was leaked over the last 2 weeks and nothing laid a glove on him, I think he's doing the right thing by saying, be in favor of what's going to happen, as you noted, and just say, I don't care. So I think the president made a good choice here.
Hugh, game this out then. If the House goes forward, at what point would the American public be able to see all these emails?
I think the moment that the House spreads them around the House, they'll begin to leak. Okay,
all the emails, for example, here's the Michael Wolff email, okay? This is a huge one. In an email from January 2019, Mr. Epp wrote to Mr. Wolf of Trump, quote, of course he knew about the criminal activity. He asked Ghislaine to stop. So the absurd, twisted response from media and wonderful, morally superior Democrats who were implicated through campaign donations and covering for him in New York and elsewhere. The absurd allegations, well, what did Trump know? Well, what did Democrats know? They got all the money. They were texting him up until 2019. Yeah, it was likely common knowledge that he was engaged in unethical, despicable, despicable, not just unethical, despicable behavior. It was probably common knowledge among Democrats and Republicans. But the only thing is, Trump was the only person to have done something, said, hey, you're out of Mar-a-Lago. He told Ghislaine to stop, trying to recruit people, whether it was at Mar-a-Lago or anywhere else. That's literally what Epp admits in the emails. And how this is turned against Trump, I don't know. So doesn't it exonerate, like logic dictates, this of course exonerates Trump if he says, hey, stop what you're doing. Stop the criminal activity, which is literally in this email. Trump says, stop the criminal activity. And of course, somehow, some way, it's spun into, Trump knew something. It's like, okay, he knew that there was criminal activity, told them to stop.
And when they begin to leak, we'll begin to see more emails with a lot of people who will suffer unfair association with Jeffrey Epstein because they didn't know that he was a pedophile and a creep and a criminal, and they had an email exchange with him. That's very unfortunate.
And that's why initially he didn't want to release any files, because now the government, while President Trump is president, has to deal with a lot of potential lawsuits, not only from people who were innocent and just happened to email Epp, but also possibly from victims.
It makes a lot of people look guilty, but I think it'll be almost instantaneous upon the release of the file that people who are not supposed to leak things will leak whatever they think might hurt or help their friends or foes, respectively.
Yeah, I wonder if there'd be redactions. Remember what the president said a while ago? He said there are a lot of innocent people going to be caught up in this.
Yeah.
Just by implication,
that's why grand jury.
Guilty.
Yeah, grand jury stuff is never let go. In fact, full field background investigations that the FBI does before they are sent up to the Senate for confirmation, you never turn those loose because people say crazy stuff all the time. They have vendettas. They make stuff up. And we're going to get a lot of that, and a lot of people are going to get dirty as a response. But as a result, the president said, I've had it. I've got nothing to do with this guy. Let the chips fall.
Okay, on another topic, Hugh, since the 2025 election just a couple of weeks ago, a lot of things are now in motion for 2026 and 2028 even. And James Carville is basically saying that the Democrats, should they win in 2026, they should pack the court. Watch here.
I mean, this is the lowest the Supreme Court has been rated. And if you believe, as I do, that we need faith in not just the executive or the congressional branch of government, but the Supreme Court. And it is not written anywhere in the Constitution you have to have 9.
What does he mean that you need faith? And why wouldn't he have faith in the Supreme Court? Because the Supreme Court is ruling consistently for President Trump over 93% of the time, overturning federal judges who are who are unconstitutional in their rulings, who rule or decide things in an unconstitutional manner simply to go after Trump because perhaps they're liberal or perhaps they're lifelong Democrats. So I love the use of language. We need faith in the Supreme Court. Yeah, we have faith. I have faith in the Supreme. I love the Supreme Court. Shouldn't have cheated Bernie Sanders and had that debacle in 2016, which is the typical Democratic Party debacle: secret servers with with top secret intel transferred onto them, cheating Bernie Sanders in a primary, then they cheat Biden 8 years later. We can go on forever.
9. The Supreme Court does not serve the law. It serves the interests of the Republican Party and corporate America, and everybody knows that. And I think it would be a good idea to return some balance to it. I really do.
Folks like that used to be against such.
Of course you'd like more balance, because they keep ruling in Trump's favor, because Democrats consistently are on the unconstitutional side, or they're on the wrong side of history, because they continually try to, for example, kick Trump out of the ballot. These are the wonderful people who are against despots and authoritarians. They tried to literally ban Trump from running. And of course, it was unanimous. Even liberal justices voted against the Colorado State Supreme Court.
Radical ideas, but now, Hugh, is it becoming mainstream for Democrats to think this is a good idea?
I'm very shocked by that. James Carville is a very smart guy. He knows that packing the court would be the end of the rule of law in America. It's been at 9 since 1868. There's a good argument, in fact, that the 14th Amendment would not allow a bill to expand it. They were passed concurrently, but in the same period of time. The most it's ever been is 10. The moment you start packing the court to get a result that you want is the moment that we no longer have rule of law in the United States. Right. And that's very troubling to hear a guy as smart as James Carville say something as wildly irresponsible for the best in.
So theoretically, Democrats could pack it with 2 more, make it 11. Then Republicans could pack it with 4 more, make it 15, and we can go on and on and on and have never-ending odd numbers with more and more Democrats and Republicans, and whoever just has 1 or 2 more, could then get control of the court. So,
interest of the country is that.
But he went further than that with Kayleigh's interview. He talked about D.C. and Puerto Rico. I mean, this has been debated back and forth as a foolish game, but Carville's taken it seriously. Last comment on that, Hugh.
I think a lot of the Democratic Party is reacting to the rise of the DSA and the municipal Marxists in both New York City and Seattle, and they're trying to remain relevant by explaining that they're just as radical as any radical out there, but they're not. They're mainstream, old-line, center-left Democrats who ought to hang on to their party and not let it get captured by the ideological extremes. Right now, it looks to me like a replay of 1972, way back when George McGovern took over the Democratic Party and took it over the left cliff in 1972. That's what I think I'm seeing with my friends in the Democratic Party who've lost control of their party to left-wing lunatics on the.
So, that political party is now firmly. The energy is with the socialists or the far left. There's zero energy. The only money comes from the centrists, and again, the money, whether it's $50,000 or $20,000 to Hillary Clinton, the money comes from oftentimes shady, possibly criminal sources. $139,000 Jeffrey Epps gave to Democrats. Let's continue.
Trump is now calling on Republicans to release the Epstein files, and a vote could come as soon as this week. What a change that is.
Mark Meredith is live at the White House on that with us. What's the latest, Mark?
Sandra, Brian, and Lawrence, it is a big U-turn for President Trump. He is now encouraging House Republicans to vote this upcoming bill in the House, which would basically compel the Department of Justice to release its files on the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, who died in prison back in 2019. Let me show you the post on Truth Social overnight. The president saying House Republicans should vote to release the files because we have nothing to hide, and it's time to move on from this Democrat hoax perpetuated by radical left lunatics in order to deflect from the great success of the Republican Party. Trump added, let's start talking about the party's record-setting achievements and not fall into the Epstein trap, which is actually a curse on the Democrats, not us. Now, the president has repeatedly called this Epstein probe, which has gained steam on Capitol Hill, even in just recent days, a hoax. We heard from House Speaker Mike Johnson over the weekend, who says this is all about politics, not transparency.
Remember, the Biden DOJ had every one of these files in their possession for 4 years, and neither Hakeem Jeffries or Ro Khanna or Thomas Massie or any of them ever said a word about it.
They never said a word about it because they know it's a Democratic Party scandal, because they know that he gave $139,000 to Democrats. They know that Democrats in New York, here's a Vox article, the state of New York protected Jeffrey Epps, not his victims. Okay, even Vox wrote about that. It's common knowledge that Democrats in New York and elsewhere protected Jeffrey Epps. It's common knowledge. This is not rocket science. This is common knowledge. Okay, now they think it implicates Trump because he didn't want to release all the files initially because he didn't want to go through potentially endless lawsuits. Also, the files are likely corrupted. Anything that incriminates anyone, even the people who accepted, let's say, money from Jeffrey Epps, almost certainly isn't there. Okay, because you had 4 years of Biden, 8 years of President Obama. You had Democrats routinely filter things through the U.S. government, like the Steele dossier. So there was a potential for them to just, delete, hide documents. They were deleting things all the time. Clinton's servers with top secret intelligence on them. Anyway, let's continue.
President Trump has clean hands. He's not worried about it. I talk to him all the time. He has nothing to do with this. He's frustrated that they're turning it into a political issue, and it's not surprising because the Democrats have nothing else to talk about.
Perhaps one of the most dramatic moments we've seen in the past 48 hours or so is Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia, who is a staunch supporter of the president, who has been out there publicly saying she wants to see these documents released and she's going to vote in favor of it. She and Trump are now in a war of words with each other, and he is being very critical of her, saying basically he doesn't want to see her in Congress anymore. He's not going to endorse her. He also said that the threats that she's getting, that he does not believe public safety is a risk for her. She says she's gotten a lot of threats from coming out in support of this. But Sandra, Brian, and Lawrence, there, I think, is another X factor, and all of this is going to happen. So
I love Marjorie Taylor Greene. I think that I think that President Trump and Congresswoman Greene will make up very, very soon.
So the House will vote on whether or not to release the files. All indications are the votes will be there. It kicks it over to the Senate. We don't know what the Senate is going to do, whether or not it would actually get a vote there. And then there's always the possibility of a presidential veto, which would kick this issue back to Congress. And we'll see if the president has any more to say on the timeline of how that could happen when he speaks a little bit later on today.
Again, so this is one of the emails that was supposed to harm Trump. It only harms Democrats because we have a Democrat texting him in 2019, okay? This was also a liberal journalist who devoted his life to trying to go after Trump, being very, very friendly with Jeffrey Epp. In an email from January 2019, this is from the New York Times, Epp wrote to Mr. Wolf of Mr. Trump. Of course he knew, as he asked Ghislaine to stop. Okay? That literally exonerates Trump. It's literally stating, yeah, he knew, and he told Ghislaine to stop recruiting people, stop, doing the criminal activity. And he kicked them out of Mar-a-Lago. So, again, they're trying to say that Ghislaine Maxwell, her testimony is not is undermined by any emails. No, they're bolstered by emails, not undermined. They're literally bolstered. Then they're saying, oh, well, she's getting preferential treatment in that prison. It's like, well, okay, which one is it? Do you want these people to speak? Because they're not going to speak without some leverage, okay? So she's speaking. Everything she's saying is exonerating Trump or she's stating the same things that Michael Wolff heard. That Trump was not a part of any criminal activity, that when he found out that there was something potentially wrong or criminal, he kicked them out of Mar-a-Lago. Whereas Democrats up until 2019 kept texting, literally conversing with, you couldn't even make this up. And yet Trump has something to hide. Okay, he's not the one who's beholden to any donor. It was Democrats who were beholden to people who gave them money, in this case, $139,000 and a whole bunch of other money.
Okay. Lawrence, Brian,
thanks so much. Mark. And the key is, just so you know, part of the reason why they didn't want to throw this out is because he was hanging out with the rich, the famous for 10, 15, 20 years, other country leaders. And if their name pops up in this, even if they were totally innocent, they're going to say, well, you're part of the Epstein files. So that was part of it.
And that's the issue. President Trump didn't realize the groundswell of support to get all of this information out there. Once he became president for the second time, people said, hey, you know what? You promised to release it. And he was like, okay, now we have to deal with lawsuits from people who are going to be caught up in this, who didn't commit any criminal acts. But let's continue. Okay, all of this points to the usual suspects. And you'll see here.
J.D. Vance moments ago applauding the House Oversight Committee subpoenas to former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, along with 8 others. The Oversight Committee also continuing its investigation into Joe Biden's mental fitness and the use of the auto pen during Biden's presidency. Former Biden senior advisor Anita Dunn testified last Thursday, telling the committee that Biden's inner circle came to the conclusion that he should not take a cognitive test, even though she said they all felt that, he would pass one easily. Earlier in the week, former Biden Deputy Chief of Staff Bruce Reed told the committee ex-White House doctor Kevin O'Connor dismissed cognitive tests as, quote, meaningless. Joining me now in this Sunday Morning Futures exclusive is the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, Kentucky Congressman James Comer. Mr. Chairman, good to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
Good morning, Maria.
I want to first talk about these subpoenas to Hillary and Bill Clinton. When are you expecting them to come in to testify under oath?
The viral Paleo Valley meat stick.
We've asked them to come in October. We've given them specific dates. What makes these subpoenas special and historical is that they came as a result of a bipartisan vote. The Democrats made a motion, like we knew they would, to subpoena the Epstein documents, which Republicans support. Scott Perry from Pennsylvania amended that motion to include subpoenas for both Bill and Hillary Clinton, as well as 6 former attorneys generals, and the Democrats voted for it. Now they're scared and trying to say they didn't vote for it, but they did. It's on record, and that helps us in court. If the Clintons try to fight this subpoena, which we presume they will, this subpoena came as a result of a bipartisan vote, which has never happened before in the House Oversight Committee. So we're looking forward to hearing from the Clintons. The American people want to know what went on Epstein Island. We know Clinton went there many times. We just want to ask Bill Clinton what he saw when he was there, and who all was.
So Democrats aren't interested in releasing flight logs. Okay, Trump had a plane. That's yet another, every single time, like a moth to a flame. They're so obsessed with trying to get Trump. And this was, yes, politically, it was very easy for them to pile on. But it all points back to Democrats. That's why Bill and Hillary are being subpoenaed. Because they got money. Hillary got $20,000. From him in 1999, $20,000. Bill Clinton got $1,000, but he probably got also some other money as well. Okay, because he gave to political action committees also. So we're not even talking about the money he gave to PACs. So the question is, what do the people who received money from Jeffrey Epps have to hide? Did they cover for him? Why did he give money? That's the question to ask. Okay. The same people who are like, what does Trump have to hide from not releasing everything? It's like, well, number one, unfortunately, Democrats have had a long time to delete or corrupt files and try to maybe even add Trump's name here and there when there's zero correlation, or just literally a Steele dossier moment where they're fabricating things, which is what they've done for the past 10 years with the Steele dossier and other stories. Okay, literally, they just create myths. But mainly it's lawsuits. He doesn't want either victims. He doesn't want innocent celebrities or very powerful billionaires to start suing the government. So he has to deal with these endless lawsuits. Maybe a loss in support as well. Maybe a loss in donor money to the Republicans. If innocent billionaires are like, yeah, I didn't even do anything. If a billionaire did nothing wrong but knew Jeffrey Epps, and then is released in an email, they might not give to J.D. Vance or the Viewer. They might not give, not because they're hiding any criminal activity, like very likely wonderful, morally superior Democrats could be, for covering for the man for so long, the monster. But they might say, hey, you know what? I don't want to be implicated in all this nonsense, especially since they had nothing to do with it. And so he doesn't want to deal with lawsuits. That's the issue. It's not like, what does he have to hide? The same people are like, what does Trump have to hide? Well, obviously, we know from one of the emails, Trump literally said, hey, stop what you're doing. Get out of Mar-a-Lago. I don't want to have anything to do with you. It's like every time, every single thing they think hurts Trump goes back to them like a boomerang. And now you have a deposition that Bill and Hillary have to attend, which they'll do everything possible not to attend. And it's like, well, how is that going to, because Clinton is going to get indicted for Russiagate. And that's going to happen from the Florida grand jury and the conspiracy statutes that they level against Comey and everything. Comey might actually, be able to circumvent the perjury because he had his. I read the court ruling. There's a possibility, like they're trying to say that the government obtained information on his attorney who he happened to use potentially to literally leak. So possibly he used his attorney to leak and potentially commit a criminal act. And then they say, well, it's attorney-client privilege. But you can't cite attorney-client privilege if you're doing something criminal with your attorney, which potentially is what Comey and the person that he used to leak information, possibly they committed. And so, then the judge was like, citing prosecutorial misconduct because of things that Jack Smith and others, that was like, it was nothing compared to what Trump had to experience. But anyway, let's continue. Comey, Brennan, all of them will almost certainly receive, there'll be conspiracy statutes leveled at them because there are statutes that can be leveled to prevent people, like when people break the law utilizing a dossier to set up and frame an incoming candidate. That can't happen again in U.S. history. They literally created a new Cold War or a McCarthy-era Red Scare based on something Clinton purchased. But anyway, let's continue.
Was involved.
Well, I mean, look, there's a lot of information to be gained from an interview under oath with Hillary and Bill Clinton, that's for sure. Would you also get into Russia collusion?
Well, we would like to ask about that. I'm sure their lawyers are going to be negotiating the terms. The subpoena was issued a few days before the Russia collusion story really broke. But certainly we're going to ask as many questions as we can ask. This is an opportunity to get the Clintons under oath, which people have been trying to do for a long time. So hopefully we'll be able to do that, and we'll get answers to a lot of questions that the American people have.
So you say that they're going to be fighting this. You think this is going to go through the courts?
I would be shocked if it did not go to the courts. But again, one thing that stands out is this bipartisan vote. We've never had that. I've been chairman of the House Oversight Committee for a year and a half, Maria, and I've never lost a subpoena battle. This is the toughest battle that we're going to face is getting the Clintons in here. But again, that bipartisan vote, and I want to thank the Democrats on the House Oversight Committee for voting for that subpoena.
Well, I mean, look, another tough battle that you've got in front of you is getting to the bottom of President Biden's 4 years in office. And what was going on there? I mean, it was all very simple and clear for everyone to see that he was, struggling in terms of his mental capacity and this use of the auto pen. Who was running the country for the last 4 years before President Trump?
What's up, everyone? Today,
well, it looks like a very small inner circle of no-name unelected bureaucrats. They had a tight reign over Joe Biden. They didn't allow a lot of cabinet secretaries like Pete Buttigieg to have access to Joe Biden. They certainly didn't allow the White House press corps to have access to Joe Biden. When he did come out, he was very scripted. And what we've learned is that even when the American people realized after the Hur report and after the disastrous debate performance against Donald Trump that Joe Biden was in mental decline, his staff, we learned from Anita Dunn this week, made the decision not to give Joe Biden a cognitive test, even when the American people.
So whether it's Jeffrey Epps giving hundreds of thousands of dollars to Democrats for a reason, right? That's why even Vox and CNN wrote about how New York Democrats were shielding Jeffrey Epps. When it's that scandal, then it's Clinton's servers with top secret intel illegally transferred onto them, which is impossible from a cybersecurity security perspective. Nobody asked, well, what was Clinton and what were Clinton and Democrats hiding in emails that were deleted? Nobody asked that question, okay? Or how did top secret or classified data actually get transferred? Comey never explained. None of those people who set up and framed Trump ever explained how Clinton's servers could be connected to U.S. government servers. It's literally impossible to do. And so then you have Hunter's laptop with 50 intel officials. Could you imagine if Trump had Secret Service and a laptop and 50 intel officials, and he said he had Secret Service for yoga, and he was getting money from Jeffrey Epps, and he was texting Jeffrey Epps in 2019? Could you imagine if the tables were turned? But Democrats, because all of media levels suspicion, media exists in this country, political media, to funnel suspicion away from Democrats, which is the natural gravitational pull, right? It's like, oh, you're getting all that money from Jeffrey Epps. What were you giving him? No, Trump won't release it because of lawsuits. So, let's funnel suspicion back to Trump. And it's like, and then you have the pardon scandal, where you have a man, God bless him, who is so mentally or cognitively impaired that his own political party kicked him out of the presidential contest, supposedly because of a debate performance, but he was the same person in 2019, in 2020, maybe a bit, more lucid, but the same issues where everyone was like, what? How on earth could Trump lose this guy? And then he pardons everyone on the planet, but he does so with AutoPen, and nobody knows who ran the AutoPen. We'll talk about that tomorrow again.
People were demanding a cognitive test. They made the decision, the ones who were running the country, that they were not going to give Joe Biden a cognitive test. And I think that is pretty overwhelming evidence that they feared what the result of that test would be.
So what do you think you will find out about who was running the country? I mean, after the Robert Hur interview was released, just a day or so later, we learned that Joe Biden had prostate cancer. But, I've got the Kevin O'Connor.
And God bless him. I want President Biden to survive, and God bless him. He's an American president. I'm not like a rabid, I can see where the criminality lies, and I could see where all the suspicion should be leveled, which is the Democratic Party. But I'm not like a rabid, apoplectic, hysterical, morally superior liberal Democrat who literally wishes for, not every case, but there are certain people who fancy themselves morally superior and then want the demise of political opponents. It's really sinister. I mean, it's a character flaw in a person's character. It's a flaw. So I want him to survive, and God bless him. I wish him only the best.
Medical report in front of me right now. There's no mention of any mental decline. There's no mention of any prostate cancer. Why suddenly do we learn this after the Robert Hur tapes were released?
Well, we've watched the Hur tapes, and they're a disaster. You understand watching the tapes why Robert Hur wrote that. I mean, that was scary. If Americans could watch that tape, and hopefully we can make that public, they would be concerned that this guy was president of the United States, had control of the nuclear football. But at the end of the day, with Dr. O'Connor, we deposed him. We brought him in for a deposition. He pled the fifth. We asked Dr. O'Connor, were you ever told to lie about Joe Biden's health? He couldn't answer that question. He pled the fifth to avoid self-incrimination. What we found about Dr. O'Connor is he declined doing a cognitive test. He supposedly said a cognitive test was not important, even though every president in my lifetime has taken cognitive tests. And we also believe that he supposedly did not check the president for prostate cancer. Every man over 50, including myself, I'm 52, takes a PSA test every time they get blood work done. So the story doesn't add up with respect to Dr. Connor. It reeks of a political cover-up, a cover-up of a president in declining health.
Now, this is just the sweetest.
Think that this was an all-out effort by the Democrats to keep their grip on power, even though they knew that the leader in charge, Joe Biden, really did not have the capacity to keep going, and then they actually encouraged him to run for another term?
It looks like it. And that's what's the most shocking about this whole thing. This didn't just happen around the time of the debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. This happened, a year prior to that. And yet this small inner circle wanted to keep this man in the Oval Office, even though they knew he couldn't perform the duties of President of the United States for another 4 years. That's what's so disappointing about all of this. And what you see with the last 90 days, that's when I think the auto pen was abused the most, Maria. The last 90 days after Donald Trump wins the election and you're in that lame duck period, they start cranking stuff through that auto pen like crazy. Pardons, thousands of pardons, and executive orders whose sole purpose of these executive orders was to Trump-proof the Trump administration, to make it harder to get federal employees to come back to work, to make it harder to eliminate agencies like the Department of Education. So that's why this investigation is important. We believe that there's a possibility that a lot of these executive orders and pardons can be declared null and void in a court of law.
So you're saying that those
So the pardons will eventually be null and void by the Supreme Court. Nobody knows who ran the auto pen. None of his staffers have any contact or knowledge of who these people were that ran the auto pen. And there's no direct paper trail, email, verbal trail to Biden, the president, who is the only person able to pardon anyone under the Constitution.
pardons may not be legal or legitimate?
I am saying that, Maria. And if you look at Joe Biden's one interview he's given in post-presidency about the auto pen was with the New York Times, and he admitted to the New York Times that they wouldn't, that they, that he just delegated that to staff.
Tonight, the House committee investigating documents surrounding the Jeffrey Epstein case is now going after some big names. The committee has issued subpoenas to former President Bill Clinton, former presidential nominee Hillary Clinton, and several top law enforcement officials. Also tonight, former Deputy Chief of Staff to then President Biden appeared voluntarily before the same House panel probing an alleged cover-up of President Biden's mental health. Senior national correspondent Aisha Hasni reports from Capitol Hill tonight on these two investigations. Good evening, Aisha.
Brett, good evening to you. You know, the Biden investigation really divided Democrats and Republicans. But Republicans now say this fresh Epstein probe is such a bipartisan effort that even the Clintons may not be able to escape it. Tonight, former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton are facing congressional subpoenas to testify in person about Jeffrey Epstein. The House Oversight Committee summoning the Clintons and 8 former.
So again, the testimony, the people the Oversight Committee are sending subpoenas to are linked to Democrats because he was a Democratic donor. To my super chat, thank you, Paul. Thank you again to my super chat. He's a Democratic donor. That's the DCCC received a $10,000 check in 2018. In 2018. Okay. In 2019, Vox published the state of New York protected Epstein. Who runs the state of New York? Trump Republicans? Make America great again? No, Democrats. $139,000. I mean, what did Democrats give to this man in exchange for the money? That's a logical, rational, reasonable question. That's a question that would be given. I mean, everybody would be asking that if Trump got all that money from him, Jeffrey Epps.
Former FBI directors and attorneys general spanning from the Bush era to the Biden White House. The historic move comes as pressure grows on Republicans and the Trump administration to release the Epstein files, and as President Trump points his finger away from himself.
By the way, I never went to the island, and Bill Clinton went there supposedly 28 times.
Clinton has denied that, but Oversight Chairman James Comer tells Fox
there's no evidence that Bill or Hillary Clinton committed any. There's no direct evidence. There's circumstantial, but there's no direct evidence that Bill or Hillary Clinton or John Kerry or any Democrat or any Republican committed any crimes with Jeffrey Epstein. There is no direct evidence. There are hundreds of thousands of dollars of money from that monster going to Democrats, though. And the emails almost always exonerate Trump. They actually always do exonerate Trump. But let's continue.
He's got questions.
Well, were you ever at Epstein Island? How many times did you go to Epstein Island? What was your relationship with Jeffrey Epstein?
No former president has ever come to the Hill.
So you're never going to get that, that, and Maxwell's right there. So the same people are like, Don't believe her. It's like, okay, great. Maybe not, but she's with Jeffrey Epps and Bill Clinton. And it seems that everyone's getting along. They're all laughing. So, okay. Again, he was a Democratic donor for years. For years and years and years. So much. He was so closely tied to the Democratic Party that one Democrat was literally texting him. I mean, how on earth? The best they have is, Jeffrey Epps didn't like Trump. Yes, good. You don't want somebody to like. You don't want a monster to say, Trump's a good man. If that monster said Trump's a great guy, then they would say, Jeffrey Epps likes Trump. And that's even more incriminating. No, you don't want a monster to like you. Okay, that's for sure. You don't want an evil, despicable, diabolical criminal to like you.
For a deposition, but Comer says the Clintons will have a hard time dodging this one since the left wants answers too. Last week, 4 Democrats on an oversight panel voted with 3 Republicans to subpoena the Justice Department for the Epstein files. Democrats are looking for one name.
Donald Trump is clearly going to do everything that he can to minimize the impact to him, but yet he's involved in the cover-up, and we believe Republicans are helping in that right.
Really? He was involved in New York? The cover-up in New York? The state of New York protected Jeffrey Epps. Even Vox published that. He was involved in accepting $139,000 from Jeffrey Epps with Democrats. Democrats still keeping the money, by the way. DNC holds on to decades-old Jeffrey Epps donations after other Dems return theirs. I love that. They take the money, either get interest on it or whatever they do with it, and then they return it. Like a Ponzi scheme. And then, or whatever, or reverse, who knows. And then you have 2019, Democrats texting, literally texting in 2019. This is years after. Years after they knew of all the criminal behavior. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, hit subscribe to this channel right now. See you tomorrow. We'll do 3 live streams tomorrow. Probably 2, but we'll ramp things up. Things are getting heated up. God bless you all. The emails, like I said, this is just one of them from Michael Wolff. Michael Wolff tried to blackmail Epstein and get him to turn on Trump or, find something on Trump. They had nothing. If anything, Jeffrey Epps was, he told, of course he knew of the criminal activity. He kicked us out of Mar-a-Lago, told us to stop what they were doing. So it's like, yet again, it never works out. They were trying so desperately to get Trump, and they got nothing on Trump, absolutely nothing. And everything points back to the usual suspects who take money from everybody on the planet. Anyway, hit subscribe. See you tomorrow, everybody.